Hello and welcome to the agenda from the Blood Red channel, wherever you get your audio on demand, or if you are joining us on YouTube. If you're joining us on YouTube, you may notice something slightly different, a different backdrop from usual, not our shiny studio at Echo HQ, but instead our own places. I'm coming live from my kitchen here on the Blood Red channel, myself, Clarke, and alongside me, Matt Addison. Matt, thanks for joining me. We're going to talk all things out of the UEFA meeting on Tuesday, the postponement of Euro 2020, just when the governing body, European football, want to see the season finished, and crucially, if that can possibly happen. But thanks for joining me, and I like the prints in your living room, mate.
Thank you very much, mate. Yeah, slightly different studio to normal, but amidst the coronavirus outbreak, we try and keep everyone updated with the news, and hopefully it's not too depressing with no football to come for a few weeks.
No, and that's certainly where we will start then. Out of the UEFA meeting, we had our very own Paul Gorst on the breaking news earlier in the day, reacting to the fact that UEFA 2020 will now be UEFA 2021, that being pushed back a full calendar year, and that obviously due to this outbreak that has sort of swarmed everything amongst it all around Europe and even further beyond.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I don't think there was really any other option once the coronavirus has taken hold as it has done. I think particularly this year with the Euros being slightly spread out across Europe, of course, people couldn't travel. There was different complications, if you like, with different stadiums being used across various different venues. And as far afield as Russia, and I think England was in the majority of it, but yeah, just an impossible situation really amidst what's gone on over the last few days. And I don't think it should be a massive surprise to anyone that this has been put back, but certainly it will have huge implications in terms of the scheduling of the season, the financial aspect of it as well, which is absolutely enormous, because we can't forget, as much as football is a fantastic sport to watch, it's also huge business as well. So yeah, it's certainly uncertain but interesting times to come, I think.
Yeah, we got a bit of a hint as well today at when football may return, and whether or not we'll discuss if that is plausible at all. But before we get on to the domestic European football and, of course, the Premier League, and when may Liverpool indeed be crowned champions of England, just some points on Euro 2020 and it being pushed back. So UEFA have said that the competition's been postponed a year and will now take place between June the 11th and July the 11th of 2021. They say that decision that has been made so priority can be given to completing domestic seasons.
Yeah, as you say, it's been put back and done so in such a way that hopefully the leagues across Europe can be completed. Of course, that initial deadline of April the 3rd, no football definitely until then, but you'd assume probably longer than that as well. Look, everything is a bit up in the air, and we don't know for sure. Things have been penciled in, possibly a little bit optimistically in my own personal opinion, but look, we sort of have to take it day by day, and the way it's escalated to this point, the situation, I don't think we can take anything for granted. We've got to sort of deal with this as and when the news trickles in from various sources and various locations. So look, it's all uncertain. Obviously, everyone hopes that football comes back as quickly as possible, but we've got to be realistic and pragmatic, if you like, in terms of, this has got to be coordinated. It's going to take such a long time, such a big plan to put in place, and well, everyone will be desperate for a variety of reasons for football to come back, just for the enjoyment of it, the finances and the economics, as I said. And look, there's no easy solution. There's so many different parties that have got to come together and come to an agreement, and everyone is going to have their own individual priorities. You've sort of got to sort of put those to one side if possible, but with the sums of money involved, I'd be surprised if that was the case. And it's going to take a number of weeks to plan, I think, and then a number of weeks to implement that.
Yeah, certainly will do. And UEFA have confirmed that immediate working groups have been set up to just examine the possibility whether or not the UEFA Champions League and Europa League will obviously be able to be completed, and as and how that may form itself will be announced over the coming days and weeks, we will imagine. All, of course, European football and international football, they say UEFA competitions have been suspended until further notice. There's no word on that. But interestingly, Euro 2020, where we started this discussion, not all of the teams, in fact, that actually qualified, there were due to be the last round of qualifying playoff matches to take place during this March international break that was meant to be sort of coming up at the back end of this week. They're now saying that they will schedule a window at the start of June for those matches to take place. But that somewhat conflicts with what is said earlier in the statement, or in terms of the club competitions in the statement, that they say that they want to try and get all the European leagues domestically to be completed by what is technically the end date of the season, the 30th of June, which is also a date because that's when a number of players' contracts across European football, whether that be in the top flight or lower leagues even, it'll be when their contracts expire.
Yeah, I think that just underlines, to be honest, the sort of complex nature of the situation. And the more you think about it, the more fraught with difficulty and problems this sort of scenario is becoming. So, as you say, the qualifiers for the Euros, of course, they were never going to take place now, given what's happened in the last week or so at the end of this month. But then it's a question of what happens and where are they put into the calendar. I mean, for me, there's no real rush. If the Euros has been put back 12 months, there's not really, any particular reason why there's any rush. For me, why can't we put those qualifiers, say, in October when we have an international break, or November? But yeah, there's just so many things to think about, and there's several countries that still don't know whether they're going to be playing in the Euros. They'll be waiting for that, and Norway, in fact, their FA was one of the first to break that news of the UEFA statement this morning. They're still going to be trying to get through into that competition, and we'll see how they get on, and as well as several other matches to be done. And just from a purely sporting perspective, you've got to say that those matches have to take place at the same time. They've got to be done in the same sort of order as they would have been, just as the Premier League matches. If the Premier League does resume, you'd imagine that those games will take place in the same order that they were scheduled to do so. So, yeah, just plenty of complications, plenty of things to think about. But look, right now, health is number one priority. But hopefully, we can get back to talking about football sooner rather than later.
Yeah, it does seem, though, as though, and I suppose everyone's got to have a target to aim towards in terms of football returning. We did speak immediately when the Premier League was suspended, and people vehemently said that they didn't want to see football completed behind closed doors. Now, UEFA saying they want the domestic seasons done by the 30th of June where possible, and if they can. I think they will want everyone to come to an end around a similar week, so obviously it has as little disruption onto the following seasons. But we're talking the Premier League season suspended 6 weeks before its completion. Now, yes, you could obviously cram it perhaps down to 4 weeks. But if they're saying they want it done by the end of June, that means that, and they're talking about this international window at the start of June, that would very much seem implausible. But if we're looking at maybe even starting football back up in the middle of May, probably a bit too ambitious behind closed doors, or not, is it?
Yeah, certainly from my perspective, I think that's slightly ambitious. I don't think there's any chance at all that it comes back in the initial deadline, but I think that 3rd of April deadline was there more to buy time for the authorities to make that next decision more than anything else. To be honest, I don't think even they thought that was a realistic target for football to resume as normal. And the events of the last sort of 6-7 days or so have certainly confirmed that. I mean, the situation has escalated now to a point where people are having to work from home and self-isolate, and footballers are no different. So even if these games do come back in, say, the middle of May or whenever it might be, even to put behind closed doors, there's a huge process that the authorities and the football clubs have got to go through, because that's not as simple as it sounds. These sort of people are, you can't just turn up and play a football match. It's not a case of just having 22 players who can just turn up and play. There's several stages that's got to go through with, medical checks and that sort of thing, and television camera crews, they've got to be there. So look, it's very difficult. It's also difficult from a sporting perspective as well, because if one or two of these players do have the coronavirus once football does resume, even if it's behind closed doors, rather than, talking about injuries and who's out of, the game with a hamstring injury, we might be talking about, well, who's out because they've got coronavirus. So even when football comes back, it's going to be a very strange situation, even if we play it behind closed doors, which, as you say, understandably, everyone was absolutely set against a few days ago. Now that seems a decent sort of proposition to just get the season done. But even that being the case, if we do end up playing behind closed doors, it's just not as simple as what many people might assume.
Yeah, we can watch as many reruns of classic games on Sky Sports and the like as we want, but we do want to see the football back, and behind closed doors might be that option. But still, first and foremost is the health and safety of the players, certainly with the virus. Even maybe if we're talking about the end of May, early June, it might even, who knows, in this country be coming towards a peak at that time. We obviously hope that isn't the case, but it's worth noting that for America is also being pushed back to 2021 to help European clubs deal with what is currently going on. Obviously, Europe, the epicenter at the moment of this worldwide pandemic. And Gianni Infantino, the FIFA secretary himself, last point that we need to make really, Matt, has said that he will work and endeavour to do whatever he can to ensure that football falls back into a normalised calendar whenever that can be. But of course, we've got the 2022 World Cup in Qatar. I know our own Ian Doyle has spoken about, actually, whilst this virus is obviously causing and wreaking havoc, and financially, as you've said, and economically, it will continue to prove to do so, there might be a realignment around the next World Cup.
Yeah, I mean, that certainly was one of the things that I'd thought of that potentially could be a solution to all this, is that we just sort of accept for the next 24 months or whatever it might be that football isn't going to be played as it normally is from August to May, because there's no reason for that to be the case. You know, there's no reason to say, well, we just wait, we finish this season whenever we get the opportunity to do so. Players can then go off and have their summer, or whenever that might be. It might be autumn, but they can have their break as they will need to, come back and do pre-season and just sort of reset over a period of time. The most important thing, though, I think, is that all of these leagues align and do the same thing. There's no point doing this if the Premier League do one thing and then Spain does something else and France does something else. Everyone has got to come together and align, and that is it's not going to be easy, because we know that the Premier League and even the EFL, there's a difference sometimes in agreement between policies and sort of things that they do. So taking that one step further and having it between La Liga and the Premier League or the Champions League to come into that as well, it's just so many different groups and so many different governing bodies that have got to accept that there's going to have to be a compromise somewhere, and where that will be, I mean, who knows?
Yeah, who does know indeed. But what we do know here on the Blood Red channel is we're going to endeavour to bring you as much content as we can do through the next weeks, whilst Echo HQ is probably not going to be the venue from where your videos do come from. The podcasts will continue as always, and thanks ever so much to our loyal audience on wherever you do get your audio on demand. If there is anything that you want to suggest to us, perhaps you'd like us to see us do, head over to the Blood Red Podcast Facebook group, and over there you can drop any suggestions as to the kind of content you might like to see in the coming days and weeks. My thanks go to you, Matt Addison, for joining me on this edition of The Agenda here on the Blood Red channel. And until next time, it's bye for now.